I mean, Web3 is all about ownership, right? And so one thing we were talking about, and I found really interesting, is okay, so now those companies you were talking about, they give out their NFT, and then there's a secondary market, and so like yeah, with traditional law, like you have a contract with a company, here you buy the stuff, but now it gets resold. And yeah, I found quite interesting how we talked about this aspect, and what what we have to be aware of here when you resell assets digitally.
Yeah, I think that's a super important aspect, and it doesn't get enough attention at all. So just imagine what you do when you go into an art gallery, for example. I think that's a good example that you can use. You go into the art gallery, you buy a piece of art directly from the artist, maybe, and the artist tells you, well, I know it's typically not done like that, but I will give you the right to commercially exploit the underlying intellectual property. So you may use this graphic or this picture and print it on t-shirts, on coffee mugs, or whatever. This is a very unusual case. By the way, it's also a very unusual case in the NFT space, because as a default, you just buy the art, you hang it up your wall, and that was it. You do not get any commercial use rights. But now let's imagine, because there has been a certain development in the NFT space, that NFT projects come with the digital asset and some commercial use rights attached to them. Let's just assume that this is the standard, just for the example. So in this example with the artists in the gallery, they give you the piece of art and tell you you can do t-shirts and whatever. Now you make a collection and a huge agreement with a famous fashion brand, and they print t-shirts and whatever with your original piece of art. And then one day you say, well, I don't feel like keeping this asset any longer. I want to sell the art. And with the art, I want to sell the commercial use rights to someone else. So a new buyer comes in and buys this piece of art. Now, the question is, what happens with the existing agreements that you concluded earlier with the fashion brand? And the answer is straightforward and very simple, and it is subject to the law, by the way. So it's in every copyright code, at least that I know of. These agreements will continue, so they will not be terminated. That means that the fashion company will still continue to manufacture and to sell these T-shirts, and maybe depending on which national law applies, even the original owner, so you as the person owning it when you made the agreement, will still get the royalties. That is cool for you, but the asset is already passed on, so the new owner may find itself in a position where at least the fashion market may be closed for them, because this other company, this fashion company, may even have an exclusive right to print and manufacture these t-shirts. You as the original owner gets the money, so what you buy is in fact an empty shell. And exactly the same thing can happen in the NFT space. Just imagine you buy a CryptoPunk, and the CryptoPunk comes with the full commercial use rights, which means if you, as the first owner, made an agreement with a fashion brand, an exclusive license to manufacture and sell these t-shirts, the new owner cannot do anything with the CryptoPunk, even though it owns it. It owns it, but with the encumbrance of existing licenses that were concluded earlier, and maybe even the financial benefit of this license is not something that this new owner gets. Now, the follow-up question is, so how can I avoid that I buy an empty shell? Well, the only thing you can do is to have a contractual obligation of the person selling it to you, or a representation that they have not put any encumbrances on the asset. So you will buy the CryptoPunk free of any third-party rights. And if that representation is broken, they will be liable for damages. And I know in a typical space, you would do an agreement, you will sign the license agreement, it will have a clause that says no encumbrance, no third party rights. That's not how NFT transactions typically work. So it's just putting it up for sale, someone else buying it, transaction, boom. You don't even know the seller, you have no written agreement. So what I did, for example, when I bought my CryptoPunk, is that I've only bought it from a person I can trust, and from a person that has not had previous owners, but that was the first person to even mint that. And this person, then I had a contact with that person, and I asked that person to confirm to me, basically in a side arrangement, and give me the representation that there is no encumbrance, because I didn't want to buy an empty shell.
Crazy, Oliver. Wow. Okay. Yeah. This does, like, even like you mentioned, like, you need to trust now. Like, we were trying to move with Web3 into a trustless environment, and now all of a sudden, yeah, we have this. And I think really, for also for the listeners, for the viewers, this is bigger than you think. A lot bigger, because that is one of the ways where Web3 really shines, when you give people, the asset, but also the commercial right to build out the brand, to use it for their brand. Like, we've seen it with Bored Ape Yacht Club. CryptoPunks is similar. And this is so much of the magic also with Web3, because of the loops of ownership, and yeah, creating more value for the brand, which gives more value to you and all this.